This tutorial describes step-by-step instructions for setting up and calibrating two DSLR cameras using a checkerboard calibration target of known checker size. Before we begin, you will need to download the following: Stereo Calibration Wizard, DSLR Remote Multi-Pro, checkerboard targets. Targets should be printed on matte paper, not glossy or even semi-glossy stock. Always choose and calibrate target size that is not less than half the size of the subject matter you plan to photograph. Checkerboard targets need to be mounted onto a rigid backing. For targets less than or equal to 8.5 inches by 11 inches, a 1/4 inch thick sheet of MDF particle board, plexiglass, or other flat rigid material will suffice. For larger targets, we recommend using a lightweight gator board material in 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch thickness. In order to perform a dual camera calibration, you will need the following: 2 identical DSLR cameras with lenses, a tripod with a rail, 2 3-way heads for attaching, positioning, and angling your DSLR cameras on the rail. We highly recommend using a permanent set of power adapters for your DSLR cameras, a PC or laptop running Windows 7, Windows Vista, or Windows XP. Before you can extract accurate 3D data from a pair of photographs, we must perform a camera calibration. The dual camera calibration mathematically solves for 2 sets of unknowns simultaneously: the intrinsic camera information, that is, focal length, principal point, lens distortion, etc. The extrinsic information, that is, relative rotation and translation of the camera in space. Keep in mind that the calibration we perform here will define our photographic parameters later on, that is, window size, focal length, the distance to our object, depth of field, focus, and so on. Cameras and lenses must be set to full manual control. Always trigger your cameras remotely and never shoot with automatic settings enabled. All images must be taken using identical camera and lens settings during and after calibration. Choose to calibrate photograph in either portrait or landscape camera orientation. Set up your cameras using a 1:7 ratio. If the DSLR cameras are 84 inches away from your subject, then separate your cameras by 12 inches as measured between their sensors. If the DSLR cameras are 28 inches apart as measured between their sensors, then place the cameras 196 inches from the target. If you are using prime lenses, your camera to subject distance will be fixed. Establish the camera to subject distance and then separate your cameras by 1/7 that distance. Position the checkerboard target roughly perpendicular to both your cameras. Maximize the checkerboard target within both camera views. Aim both cameras at the target center, then zoom and focus appropriately. From now on, your cameras and lenses must remain set to full manual control and triggered remotely. Create a new project directory with 2 subfolders named Camera 1 and Camera 2. The Camera 2 folder is always your top camera in a portrait configuration, or the left camera in a landscape configuration. The Camera 1 folder is always your bottom camera in a portrait configuration, or the right camera in a landscape configuration. Use the following file naming convention. Acceptable numbers are from 01 to 98. Image L01.jpg in the Camera 2 folder will share the same name as L01.jpg in the Camera 1 folder. Together, these images form a stereo pair. If you are using DSLR Remote Multi-Pro to trigger your cameras, go to the Camera menu. Edit Camera ID. Type the following: Go to File Preferences. Check the following. Set the file name as such. Set the digits to 2. Set your project directory. You must create the Camera 1 and Camera 2 subfolders within the Your Project directory on your PC prior to shooting. DSLR Remote Multi-Pro will not create these folders for you. If the Camera 1 and Camera 2 folders do not exist, then DSLR Remote Multi-Pro cannot save the images. Take your first stereo pair with the calibration target perpendicular to both DSLR cameras. Then rotate the target arbitrarily 20 to 45 degrees, left, right, up, and down, saving the images into their respective folders as you go. Move the target slightly back, forward, and repeat the rotation process. Acquire a minimum of 12 to 16 stereo paired images for optimal calibration. Maximize the checkerboard target within your camera's window. Take care not to clip the outer checkers excessively. Select a checkerboard target that is not less than half your camera's view window. Save the calibration images into the respective Camera 1 and Camera 2 folders. Use the displayed file naming convention for the matched images on either folder. Run the stereo calibration wizard. Input the number of squares on your target based on a portrait or landscape setup. Measure the size of your printer squares in millimeters. Input the value. Click Next. Set the path to your calibration photos. Click Next. Check Calibrate K1, K2, and Assume Square Pixels. Click Next. Unselect Use Best Image Pair. Select the first stereo pair. This is the stereo pair that was taken perpendicular to your cameras. Save the Camera 1.tcl and Camera 2.tcl files in the respective directories by selecting First Camera, SC, and clicking Save As to save the file camera1.tcl in the Camera 1 folder. Second Camera, SC, and clicking Save As to save the file camera2.tcl in the Camera 2 folder. The camera1.tcl and camera2.tcl files can be used to process any stereo pairs taken of your subject matter. These 2.tcl files, along with your stereo pairs, can be uploaded to the Scanner Killer server for post-3D extraction.